So today we're going to be going over a weighted wrist extension and weighted wrist flexion. Extension is when you take your wrist and you extend it or you bring it back so your fingers point more up. And then flexion is when you curl your hand and your fingers point down. This is separate from the movement of our fingers. It's about moving this wrist joint here. And our wrist is slightly at an angle. It's not straight this way. There's a tiny little angle here. So when you curl, you're going to end up with a slight deviation a little bit of your wrist won't just be like straight up. It's going to be slightly tilted. See how there's a slight angle to my wrist there when it's flexed? That's okay and normal. Just make sure it's not something dramatic like this. I don't want you like really just curling your thumb towards you, but your pinky is staying there. See if you can really make it as even as possible so that this ends up being relatively flat and relatively in line. So you're gonna take a weight. You can start with a can of tomato paste, which is a ½ pound. You can use any 16-ounce can of beans, and then you can progressively start building up. So you're gonna take your weight. Do not death grip it. It won't feel good. And that'll overtrain sort of the finger flexors, and we're really working on some more wrist flexors and extensors here. So for wrist flexion, I recommend supporting yourself on a block. You're gonna extend the wrist, and then you're gonna curl, bringing it up, trying not to overly dramatically twist here, but really making sure that everything's coming up evenly. So dropping down, not death gripping. Don't let it go at the bottom with your fingers. Again, that'll overtrain your finger flexors. So focus on this curl, curling up as much as you can. If you need to help yourself a little bit to get that extra range of motion, please do. And then slowly control it coming down. Make sure your elbow's supported and not doing this, because that's motion coming from your elbow, not your wrist. And that's the wrist flexion component. The wrist extension component, you're just gonna flip your hand over so your palm's facing the ground. And you're, again, gonna keep your elbow fixed. You might feel a little stretch through your forearm, that's fine. And then you're gonna bring the wrist down, let gravity help you. You might feel a stretch across the top, that's okay. And then you're gonna think about extending, lifting your knuckles, really coming up as high as you can. We're not just trying to get here to this neutral, I want past neutral. And you really ought to feel all the muscles of your forearm working. And then you're gonna come down. So again, make sure that you're not swiveling this way, but really coming up as even as possible. And if you've had any injuries in the past, your fingers might do something a little bit different. That's okay, as long as you're feeling the effort in these wrist extensors.